The following is a story that I published on my Sketches blog at sketch.nono.ma titled It's Nice to See You in Person. I'm offered to choose between poulet avec polenta and another meal I don't quite understand. Chicken or what? I ask. Chicken or pasta with tomato sauce, says the flight attendant. I go for chicken and a tiny bottle of water. Hey, it's Nono, and this is the Getting Simple podcast. I'm watching Steven Spielberg's AI artificial intelligence movie for the first time amidst my 9-hour Air France flight from Paris to Atlanta, where I'm traveling for an annual work conference that was reduced to Zoom meetings and online recordings over the past 2 years. Needless to say, because of the pandemic. At the end of January 2020, right before the COVID outbreak started, I walked around the same Charles de Gaulle airport terminal from which I boarded today, spotting the first surgical masks I had ever seen in public due to coronavirus. 2 or maybe 3 people amongst the early adopters that would be dubbed paranoid by some were already taking measures to protect themselves and others from what was to come. Nobody knew what was going on. Sanjay sat next to me on our way to Toronto back then, wearing a surgical mask out of precaution. But as far as I recall, nobody else on the plane wore face masks. Cases worldwide started to arise, 2 at the time in Toronto, and pharmacies started to run out of masks. Today's image of Charles de Gaulle's airport was radically different. While wearing face masks in closed public spaces has been mandatory, the requirement was recently lifted in some European countries. Yet, the airport featured dozens of mask types, the most common being light blue surgical masks. Some travelers and airport workers opted for no mask, others for wearing it, and a third category of people wore it without covering their noses. I'm sitting on aisle 42D, wearing a surgical mask, and while it's mandatory to wear masks on the plane, it's just a soft measure, it seems. Life in Malaga, Spain is slowly transitioning back to normality, a new normal with social engagements that let us momentarily forget about the pandemic. Some still opt for wearing masks outside, and I get surprised because there are some people that even get to wear them when walking entirely on their own. The plane jiggles and the crew announces an area of strong turbulence. I realize this trip will be my first in-person public speaking engagement in years, and a chance to meet people I work with for the first time without staring at a webcam to emulate eye contact. In fact, as I'm doing right now. This virtual-only approach that we've had for the past 2 years has been challenging and presented new opportunities. At a company level, travel was restricted and everyone had to transition to working from home. In my personal projects, I go to livestream and also figured out how to produce high-quality remote recordings and tutorials both for the podcast and my machine intelligence video series in this home recording studio that I'm recording from right now. The virtual ways are here to stay. But I look forward to interviewing podcast guests in person to regain the connection that Zoom conversations lack. When you close Zoom, you're back to your life, or maybe to your next call. But in-person gatherings often lead to a meal or a walk together, and also to unstructured chit-chatting. Something that can feel like unnecessary busyness over a Zoom call. Satya Nadella, Microsoft's CEO, suggests that effective remote collaboration relies in part on social capital, which, as reads a New Yorker piece that was titled How the Pandemic Transformed the Office Forever, social capital accumulates by working in the presence of others and depletes during virtual interactions. We actually need to work and collaborate in person to build that so-called social capital, but this isn't a possibility in specific remote roles. So how does remote only affect our well-being? How does it affect our ability to socialize? And how does it affect our work? As we near our destination, the crew gives us a little red bag that reads Bon Appetit, with items that look like breakfast and include, among other things, 2 warm pieces of cheese bread, a muffin à la myrtille, a pain viennois, in the bag of cherry tomatoes. I had been typing this essay on my phone for the past 2 hours, and I don't remember the last time that I spent 9 hours in a row off the grid, on airplane mode, never better said. At that moment, there was a crew member that hit my leg with a roller container. And, before we finish with this sort of pseudo-reading essay, I hope that you enjoyed this format. In terms of the essay, it was a bit of a longer format. In terms of the podcast, it's a shorter episode. So I really appreciate if you let me know what you think, maybe on the comments of the YouTube video or on Discord or over Twitter, however you can reach out to me. I'm really grateful for having the opportunity to work remotely, travel for work, dedicate time to my passion projects, and be with the people I love. Waiting in line to check at the hotel, I overheard an employee greet another colleague saying, "It's nice to see you, in person." I'm ready for mindful, sporadic work travel and excited to meet you in person really soon. So this first essay I wrote on the plane on my way to Atlanta. And this other one that I'm going to read today is shorter. I wrote and published when I was back from Atlanta. And it says like this. Last week, I found the time to write an 800-word essay on the plane to Atlanta, where I would spend 5 days for Autodesk's annual Internal Technology and Experience Conference called TechX, hosted this year at the Hilton Atlanta Hotel. And if you want to learn more, Kian Walmsley wrote about the event on his blog. I tried to sleep on my way back to Spain, skipping dinner to avoid jet lag, but that didn't really help a lot. It was great meeting friends and colleagues I've been working with through a screen for the past 2 years, especially people from the Spacemaker team who work out of Boston and Oslo. I love presenting in person to share my team's most recent project and learning about the work of other Autodesk teams. But even though the gist of the conference were these talks, the most important moments were the breaks, breakfast, lunch, evening events, and also the time in between talks, not particularly because of the food, but because we got to mingle and gossip. And, those moments were the moments in which we actually got to restore a bit of our social capital. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Before you go, I'd like to give you a brief update on what's going on the rest of my projects, right? Regarding the podcast, we released Andrew Witt's episode 2 months ago that was basically taking a look at his book, Formulations, and also in general at mathematical design, computational design, and things that have to do with AI and machine learning in the art and design field. Last month, I shared a recap on my personal projects, my daily habits, and things like that. So that's a solo episode that was published everywhere that you can listen to my podcast, like on YouTube and all the podcast platforms. And this past week, I've met with Frank Harmon. He was a teacher of mine at North Carolina State University when I was an exchange student back in 2012. We recorded, but I think we're going to plan an interview a bit better, even though there are many moments from that interview that I really enjoyed because they're genuine talk about the process he follows to write and sketch and how he conceptualizes about the project. Some of the things that he reminded me of is that you can do anything that you set your mind to, but you don't have time to do everything. So that's sort of like a quote from, or at least where I found it, from David Allen. You can do anything, not everything. He also told me that if it's not fun, you should not be doing it. And that is because some days there's like this daily rehearsal of like, I do have to write and sketch and do these things, but there's days where you don't feel like doing them, so it's not fun. And other days where you just don't have time to do them. Like maybe you're out all day or you're traveling or you're on a wedding, things that it's not possible. So I'm still trying to do that just to test it for a couple years, but it's an important reminder. I think we can learn a lot about his creative process, how he thinks about the project. He publishes essays and sketches as I do every 2 weeks. I do every week, but he actually was one of the main inspirations that I used to start publishing as well on my own. I have been treating many different topics on the live stream. So you can see there's like some titles and some of them have chapters. As I've repeated many times, I'm looking for help. I'm already talking to certain people that are going to collaborate with me on the project, trying to teach some people to how to edit videos and maybe how to edit podcasts as well. So yeah, if you want to also join forces and work on these projects, let me know. Shoot me an email at me@nono.ma or simply reach out on social media or through the comments on the videos or on the Discord server. And a quick reminder, you can read these essays at sketch.nono.ma. You can subscribe there by email as well. You can also subscribe to the podcast at gettingsimple.com/podcast or /newsletter. And yeah, feel free to subscribe on YouTube if you are enjoying the videos and the podcast that I'm making, and like the videos and share them with your friends if you're enjoying. Again, it was a pleasure. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, it's Nono, and this is the Getting Simple podcast.